Now it's time to turn this valve, and hopefully we won't have any problems. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? I hope everybody out there is having an awesome day. Today we're going to continue along with our fall planting and finally get some stuff planted in these raised beds here that we've been working so hard to get ready for this time of year. So the first thing I want to do is show you what we're topping off the raised beds with, show you kind of how we're doing that. Then we're going to finish up the irrigation on top of the beds and hopefully get some stuff planted. So on the last video I walked you through the in-ground drip irrigation install, and then we planted a lot of good stuff in this in-ground plot here. Got some broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and cabbage. And if you missed that one, I'll put a card up here at the top so you can go check that out. So now that we've got that in-ground plot finished, the rest of our cool season veggies, with the exception of our onions and garlic, are going in these raised beds here. So earlier today, Abram and I came out here and started spreading a little bit of this red mulch around these beds in the front. Still got a ways to go, but I'm really liking how it's looking so far. I think it's going to look pretty good once we get it around all these beds. And in addition to that, we went ahead and topped off these beds with several different things. We did 12 of them, but I left one right here on the corner so I can show you how we did it. Now, when we started this project several weeks ago, we asked some of you guys what you use for soil in the top of your raised beds. And a lot of people said that they use what they call maize mix. I'd never heard of that before, so I had to look it up, and apparently it's a third vermiculite, a third peat moss, and a third compost. Still don't really know who male is, but seems to be a pretty popular fella or gal. Not sure if male is short for Melanie or whatever. Anyway, I've got kind of my own mix that we're using here, or a combination of things that we're using here. So we're going to call this Trav's mix. So all these raised beds are mostly filled with this stuff here, which I showed you several videos ago. This is composted hardwood wood chips that have been breaking down for about 12 or 13 years. Well, the guy told me some really nice stuff, and you could just plant in this without really adding anything else. Now, the fact that this stuff is made from hardwood wood chips, I think, is very important to note. Had it been made with pine wood chips, we might have some acidity issues there where we'd need to raise the pH. I am going to get this stuff tested, but I don't think there's going to be any serious pH issues with it. Now, for all these things that we're going to add here, or that we've already added in these other beds, I haven't really been mixing them together or mixing them in there, just kind of been layering them on top of one another. I figure they'll get mixed together pretty good once we make a little mini furrow, bury our tape, and plant in a minute. So the first thing we're going to add is some of this sandy soil, dirt, whatever you want to call it right here, this native soil in this plot. Now, this stuff is dry right now and it looks pretty lifeless, but we had soybeans here, we had chickens grazing those soybeans, so I know there's some good nitrogen in this soil right here, and I want to take advantage of that and put some of that in the raised beds. So I just skimmed the surface there, got about 3 or 4 of those big shovels full, and put that on top of those composted wood chips. You can see it there, not a real thick layer, but we want to just make sure we kind of covered what was there. Now, the next thing I'm adding is a little fertilizer amendment. We got some of this good Nature Safe 855 here, a good somewhat balanced fertilizer. And so for the big beds, I was using about 3/4 of one of these pitchers. For these smaller beds, you know, maybe half a pitcher, maybe a little less than that. So I'm just kind of sprinkling this all over the entire bed here, because we're going to be planting these beds pretty dense. So it's not like where we do in the in-ground garden, we just amend our furrow. Here we're going to amend the whole bed so that we got nutrients across the entire bed there. And that's probably pretty good right there. And then the next thing I'm adding, mainly because I saw it at Lowe's when I was getting some potting mix and they had a pretty good deal on it, is this black velvet mushroom compost. Now, I haven't been adding a whole lot of this, just kind of, you know, sprinkle it on top a little bit there. I bought, I think, 4 bags of this. It was around $4 or so a bag. I bought 4 bags, and 4 bags has been plenty for all these raised beds. So It's not like I'm covering the entire soil surface with it, just kind of sprinkling it along here. I don't think we need a whole lot of this, but it can't hurt anything. Hopefully this will help out our soil, get some good fungi growing in here at some point, have some really healthy soil. And then the last thing we're adding on top is just some of this kind of plain Jane stay green potting mix, container gardening mix. Got a little perlite in it. We're not adding a whole lot of this, just enough to kind of cover the top. I think I got 4 or 5 bags of this, and it's been plenty for all these raised beds. So we'll just dump a little bit here. This has got some nice perlite in it and stuff, so should make a nice topping for the beds. And just smooth it out just like that. Get all those low spots. And that's it. That is what we've been layering these things with. Now I forgot to mention, there is one more little thing I'm going to be adding as soon as it comes in the mail in the next couple days. This stuff called Dino Myco. It's like a mycorrhizal supplement, I guess you could call it. I've used it in my oldest no-till plot before, and it seems to really get those fungal associations going in the soil. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of that in each bed as well when I get it here, but that's pretty much it. So now all we need to do is finish up our drip fittings here at the top of each bed, lay a little tape, and we'll be ready to plant. But we don't have a way to get water through this main line yet, so we need to install a filter and a pressure regulator right here so we can hook up our water hose. So this here is that same setup I showed you on the last video. We've got our water hose connection here, all part of this filter, which is housed inside of here, our pressure regulator, and our T. And if you want to see how this was put together, you can go watch that previous video. So we just need to cut this right here so we can install that right there. So just cut our main line here. And I actually went out and cut out a little piece of it because the rest of this main line is buried and I want it to all kind of go together pretty nicely. So put one end of the T right here. Tighten that down. I need to cut a little bit more of that off. We'll get that end on there. Tighten it down. Now we can hook up our water. Now we got our water hose hooked up there, but before I turn it on, I'm going to unscrew one of these end caps here on the other side of the plot. That way we can flush the system a little bit. I'm pretty sure I got some dirt in these lines when I was putting everything together. So hopefully that'll allow us to flush it and then we'll cap it back. So we flushed it out right there. I put the end cap back on, and then I also went around to a few of these beds and uncrimped the main line at the top there, made sure water was flowing out of those nicely, and it looks like everything is working as it should. So now we can install some fittings at the top of our bed here so we can run drip tape that way. That's the direction our rows are going to be planted. So last night I put together a couple of these for the beds that we're going to be planting today. It may look complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. So right here we've got an elbow, then we've got a little 2-inch, approximately 2-inch piece of main line. We've got a valve right here which is going to allow us to turn each bed on and off just by doing that. Another little 2-inch piece of main line tubing, and then a T right here. So we'll have one of these at the top of every single one of these raised beds here. Now before I started assembling all these, I was thinking, man, there's got to be a better way here. Surely there's a fitting out there of a T with a valve on it. So I got to digging around on Drip Depot's website, and yes indeed there is a fitting that is a T with a valve on it. Well, those things are like $15 a piece. I don't know why they're so expensive. Seems like it would be a pretty common fitting. So I'm much cheaper building them out myself like this. It's a little longer than if it was consolidated into one fitting, but this will work, and this is the cheap way to do it. So let me show you how we're going to install this bad boy. We'll take off this figure 8 clamp right here. Oh, there's some water. I got the water turned off right now. We won't need that figure 8 end clamp anymore because we're going to have this valve here where we can stop the flow of water through here. We need to figure out where we want it to sit. We kind of want this to sit on top of the soil. We don't want it to be way up here and kind of drooping down. So probably right about there is going to be good. Let me pull back a little of this soil here, and we'll cut this tubing. And then we just need to press this elbow down onto it here. Just like that. We can move this soil back around it. We can also shift that tubing a little bit too. It's not quite in the center of the bed. And there we go. So we have water coming up from the bottom. We've got our valve right here. We can turn the water on and off for this bed. We've got our T. Now we can run main line this way and this way, which is going to feed drip tape that's going to go that way. Now when we were hooking up all our mainline tubing underneath these beds, I saved all these scrap pieces from cutting and joining all those big mainline pieces because I knew I could use them on top of the beds here. So let's go ahead and put a piece on this end of the T right here. Tighten that down. Put another piece on this end of the T right here. Tighten that down. We need to trim them off on the ends here. Right there. And we really shouldn't ever have to replace this main line here, or we shouldn't have to replace it that often. If we change our row spacing in here, after we've got a bunch of holes punched in this main line, we may have to come in and replace it. But as long as we keep our row spacing kind of the same in these beds, we shouldn't have to redo this a whole lot. So now I'm just going to cap off the end of our main line tubing with these end caps. Got one there. Got one there. So there you go. Now we're ready for some drip tape. So that's the entire setup there on top of the beds, minus the drip tape, of course. And yes, we do have a little bit of wasted space there behind that main line, but I don't really know any way to get around that if you're going to use a valve on each one like we are. If we didn't have the valve on there, that would back it up a little bit. If you're coming on the outside of the beds instead of on the inside of the beds, that probably cuts out a little bit of that wasted space too, but it's only about 5 or 6 inches or so. Not going to hurt anything. Still got a lot of good space there where we can plant. Now in this particular bed that we just set up, we're going to be putting red cabbage and rutabagas in here. Now if I was planting these in my in-ground garden, I would give myself about 3 foot of row spacing, but because we're planting in the raised bed, we're going to pack things in there a little tighter. I can't remember exactly how wide these beds are, but I think, or at least I'm going to try, to get 2 rows of rutabagas and 2 rows of red cabbage in here. Typically red cabbage doesn't get quite as large as green cabbage, so I think we can squeeze 2 rows of red cabbage on one side of the bed, 2 rows of rutabagas on the other side. If it doesn't work and we end up with a bunch of small cabbage, at least we will have learned something. Now in these raised beds, I'm going to bury my drip tape just like I do in my in-ground garden. I'm just going to do it a little differently because it's on a much smaller scale. So I'm going to take this little triangle hoe and I'm going to scratch me out where my 4 rows are going to be, where we're going to bury that drip tape. All right, so we got this little mini furrow for all 4 rows. Now let me go grab some tape and some fittings and we'll get all this hooked up. So I cut 4 pieces of tape here approximately to length. And I'm going to use the row starts with the valves on them. That's going to give us even more control over the situation here. That way, if we come in here after this stuff is done and plant something where we only want 2 rows, we can just shut 2 off and we don't have to move a lot of stuff around. So I'm going to install these row starts with the valve on them, just like that. Come in here, punch us a hole in our main line. Insert that there. and run that along the furrow. So now we got all our drip lines connected to the main line. We've got all our end caps installed down there. I just turned on the water at the spigot. Now it's time to turn this valve, and hopefully we won't have any problems. Looky there. Got lines inflating, got water coming out. Well, I sure do like it when a plan comes together. Now I know some of y'all out there are thinking, man, that sure is a lot of work just to plant a little raised bed of red cabbage and rutabagas. And yeah, it is a little bit of upfront effort to get all that done, but I promise you it's worth it to have everything set up like that. That way we just turn on the water at the spigot, everything is taken care of. We can leave it running all night if we want to. We don't have to stand here with a wand, and especially when it's like it has been around here really dry lately, this can really help to keep your plants happy. And I just went out to the greenhouse and retrieved our plants. We've got our red cabbage right there on the end of that tray of green cabbage that we planted on the last video. And then right over there we've got our rutabaga transplants. So on our red cabbage here, I think I'm gonna stick with my normal plan of putting the plants about a foot apart, since we've got the rows kind of crowded in here. And I'm gonna fish these out of here just to be a little extra careful with them. So we're gonna dig down here a little bit, put that plant right there by that emitter, and kind of cover that tape up as we go. Grab us another one out of here. Get him nice and happy right there. So we got one row of cabbage done. Let's do one more row. I think I'm going to switch varieties on this row. So that first row I did was the red jewel variety, and then I'm going to do this Buscaro variety you've never tried before here on the second row. Then on the rutabagas here, I think I might try to go a little closer with these. I have planted the rutabagas closer than a foot before, and it gone all right. So I might go, you know, 6 inches on these. Probably won't make as big of a rutabaga that way, but sometimes the smaller ones taste a little better than them real giant ones. All right. We got her planted. I think she looks pretty good. We got it pretty full there. Got it pretty crowded, but that's what we're going for. We don't want a lot of wasted space in here. We want this thing full of groceries. I think our cabbage there will fill in those 12-inch gaps between the plants just fine. We got these rutabagas planted on a 6-inch spacing, which is pretty tight for rutabagas if you're going for a big root. But we're going to be eating a lot of greens off these, and I can always come in here at some point and pull every other one if we want to maximize the root size on the others. So we got the drip system running on those, and we'll probably let that run for at least another hour just to keep those new transplants nice and happy. Now, one more thing I may do, just because we're not supposed to get any rain anytime soon, I may put an overhead sprinkler in the center of this plot and let it run for an hour or two, maybe tonight, tomorrow sometime. That way we can go ahead and kind of get that organic fertilizer to start to dissolve and kind of get it activated. Otherwise, those pellets are just going to kind of sit in these plots here, and there really was no point in putting them in here earlier. So might put some water on the whole plot, all the beds there, just to kind of get our amendments going a little bit. So I think I'm just going to do that one today. I was planning on doing more, but I got somewhere I need to be in a little bit. So at least we got one of them knocked out today. Tomorrow I'll start working on a few more. Also start working on getting more of that red mulch around here. And I think within a week's time, we can probably have all the mulch down between the beds and have almost all of these planted. We'll be sure to take you guys along as we make more and more progress here in this new plot. So hopefully you enjoyed the video today, and hopefully you've enjoyed seeing this project kind of step by step and then finally come to fruition today with getting one of these beds planted. I'm pretty excited about it, and I can't wait to see it when all the beds are planted and all the pathways are mulched. And if you're a raised bed or container gardener out there, let me know what you think about what I use to top off the beds, what we call Trav's mix. Thumbs up or thumbs down? you're watching on YouTube, be sure to check out our affiliate links below. A lot of great companies that we use in our gardens here at Lazy Dog Farm, including Ollie Gardens, where we got these raised beds. Got some coupon codes for some of those companies so you can take advantage of those discounts. Don't forget to go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com, where we've got our garden blog, recipes, hats, shirts, all kind of good stuff over there. And if you did enjoy the video, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification button, like, and share. And we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.
Oh, farewell, by the beauty of your life.